All right, and we're live. Morning.
Morning.
Welcome back again to the East Coast Recovery Podcast, our third episode today, and we want to talk a little bit about the bridge to normal living and what that looks like. So, Lester, you're sort of living proof, really, that recovery is possible. But the more we hang out, the more we chat about these things, we realise that it's some, if you've got addictive tendencies, this is something that's an ongoing journey. Right. So
yeah, it's a very complicated thing. So it's kind of nice to have someone like yourself that's sort of learning about it, because there's a lot to it. It gets a bit simpler the more you understand it, but there's lots of different elements to it. And so
I've heard you talk about the concept of the bridge to normal living, and that already paints like a picture in my head. You can kind of imagine that it's clearly some kind of a journey. But what do you really mean by that?
Well, I think obviously you use a lot of analogies in treatment and in recovery.
Yeah.
And it is a recovery term, a 12-step recovery term. They say it creates a bridge to normal living. And so, when we use that term, you obviously try to give people a picture that there's a gap or a bridge or something that they've got to go over or get over. But I think going back a little bit further than that and breaking it down, not deconstructing it a little bit more, is that coming from 12-step, and I think most therapeutic is the same, and I think most people can relate to the fact that if you want people to understand, you want them to make connections. And so we use them sort of terms, I just made the connection, and we're always trying to connect the dots and connect stuff together. So from the 12-step point of view, they say that it's a threefold problem. It's spiritual, it's mental, and it's physical. And it's a threefold illness, they call it.
Yeah.
Now, the spiritual means, they use the term spiritual malady, which again means that there's a disconnect between power of the universe, nature, God, whatever you want to call it, that there's this disconnect that's occurring in people with addiction. And then it goes on to the mental condition, which is an obsession, which an obsession is a thought to the exclusion of all others. And then the physical side of it is like an allergy. So what he's saying is that when you pick up a drink, the craving kicks in. When you decide not to drink, the obsession will make you pick up a drink, the craving will kick in. But it's saying this whole process is being caused by this spiritual disconnect. So it's this idea of being disconnected or separated. And I think that's most sort of religions. I think sin is separation. It's about this idea of being separate from something.
Yeah.
So if there is a separation, then the goal would be to build a bridge. So really, even though we say it's a bridge to normal living, I kind of been thinking about talking about this today, and I'm thinking, well, that's not quite accurate, actually. It should be that this is about building a bridge to normal living. Now, even when you say the word normal these days, everyone goes, oh, what's normal? Normal's a cycle on a washing machine. There's no such thing as normal. And especially these days, that's when it says normal, all it really means is somebody that's not got normal, meaning like not being in a substance disorder crisis.
Yeah.
That you're not got an alcohol problem or a drug problem.
So it's kind of like a bridge to a higher living.
In the context of addiction, see, that's where, because we're dealing with the brain, that you're obviously dealing with people, and people are multifaceted and very complicated. The brain's very complicated. So I always like to think in terms of, and addiction can get lost in that.
Yeah.
So, I think addiction is the same for everybody. No matter what your behaviour is, the cause of your addiction is probably the same. Now, again, I think that's quite controversial for a lot of people. They go, oh, you can't say that because of this, that and other, and everybody's different. I think everybody is different, but not where addiction's concerned, not the kind of addiction I'm talking about anyway. That if you have this disconnect, then that's probably the bit that's going to be causing you your addiction problem. And so that's the bit we've got to focus on. But then when they look at people as, you know, having lots of different experiences, different kinds of people, different beliefs, different, you know, some people are sort of left, some people are right, some people are want to believe in one thing, so people are different in lots of ways, but not in every way. And you know, like not everybody that has diabetes is, they might be different people, but the diabetes, if they got the certain kind, it's the same for all of them. So therefore the treatment's the same. So kind of try and fight for that corner, because it makes it clearer what the treatment is. If they say that every, you know, and again there's variations, but it is kind of like the same thing. So that's kind of different. So when we're talking about, you know, building bridges to normal living, in this context, it's just talking about, look, normal is somebody that doesn't have an addiction problem or a substance disorder, and they're not in crisis from it. So, and then we could talk about all the other issues, which again is still good, because a lot of people do need development. I've learned that in my career, because I work mostly with statutory, which means we work with sort of government-funded people, which are usually from sort of poorer backgrounds, not so well educated, more sort of social deprivation, that sort of thing. A lot of other challenges besides their addiction. Their addiction may exacerbate it and make it worse, but you know, a lot of the treatment that we were doing in our treatment centre wasn't really for addiction. Addiction treatment, like I say, is a separate thing. What we were doing, a lot of it was almost like reparenting people, that they had a lot of disconnects. They had developed in lots of ways.
Is it a kind of lacking of a sort of morality? Like, you know, do you find that people with addiction, that they're not able to sort of hold themselves accountable in like a moral standing, and that's why they need some kind of like a higher power? I know you mentioned, to kind of bring it back down to earth.
Again, I think morality is another one of them things, is who's to say what's right and wrong, sort of thing. You know, as a sort of a Christian, I subscribe to a certain set of principles. But I think even like a little bit deeper than that, I don't think people, maybe put morality aside, but I believe that people with addiction, that they're doing things that they don't want to do.
I see.
Never mind anyone else telling them not to do it, whether it's being born out of a social construct. So I guess if you were an alcoholic Viking, you might not have stood out so much up to a point. Yeah. But then I think people would also notice at some point that you've done your rape and your pillaging, and now you're lying in the middle of the street pissing yourself and not, you know, being able to walk and get back on the boat. They might even, you're going to stand out there at some point. But I think most people aren't doing what they don't want to do.
Yeah, so it's not so much about society's constructs.
Well, I think that does come into it, because obviously if you've got a society that says, you know, you shouldn't do something, or it's not good to do something for whatever reason, and you keep doing it, then your peer group are probably not going to be happy, you know, like just turning up for work. Yeah. If society says you need to turn up for work at 9 o'clock, clean and tidy and sober, and you keep turning up at 9:30 drunk and scruffy, and then, you know, you might not want to do that either, but eventually it's going to have an effect. So, you know, there's lots of different levels, I think, to our human interactions in society, but morals is one of them sort of areas you kind of have to stay away from a little bit, because there's a big shift in what morals actually are.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that's, you know, a little bit more fluid. It's more personal, isn't it? The idea of what's your moral code isn't something you can necessarily apply to everybody equally.
I could, because of I've got a strong belief system, but not everyone's going to accept that. Yeah. So, you know, and I think there's sort of non-negotiables. So I think even in the 12 step, it says, look, we take a moral infantry, but it's not like morals, it's moral. So it's kind of, do you know the difference between right and wrong? And, you know, and I think sometimes that people, you know what? Again, and I've met people that have really got, like, you would say they've got no morals, but they're still unhappy with that they're doing things like hurting their families, hurting their children, you know, losing their careers. They're doing things that they don't want to do. So, you know, I think society does have a certain level of things that we consider are wrong that you shouldn't do, but it does get into a little bit deep water. If you again, it's trying to keep things, especially for the purpose of these sort of podcasts at the beginning anyway, just trying to make clear what we believe addiction is.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of like, this is like the hard bit about when you start with somebody, even helping to treat them, is that you're just trying to clear away all the things that it isn't. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they can see what's left is what it is, and then that's the area that you want to treat. So, you know, you always want to make, but you can also get pulled into these very confusing arguments that you've got so many levels and so many different opinions. And so for a 12-stepper, it's kind of like your goal to just keep it simple.
Yeah, so much philosophy you can get lost in.
Yeah, again, you get to points, is who knows who's right and wrong about certain things.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, it sort of clouds of water, but that's another discussion that's not about this.
Yeah.
You know, it's about trying to figure out, like, what is this bridge?
That's it.
Because the goal is, hopefully, that people will realise, man, I need to build that bridge. I need to get across that bridge.
Yeah. How does that happen?
Well, I think the thing, again, what I've learned through, you know, my years of sort of being around addiction and suffering from this problem myself, is, again, is like, I think it's, you notice through treatment, is that some people come from well-adjusted families. Because, again, I think there is a bit of a stereotype that everybody with a drug addiction, everybody who's an alcoholic has had some, you know, been molested or had some serious trauma in their life. I just don't believe that's true. And not everybody that has trauma becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict. And, you know, you can find a lot of people that had traumas, serious traumas, but managed to assess it in a healthy way as they grew up and dealt with it. And they didn't let it damage their life too much. They actually grew through it and worked their way through it just kind of almost naturally. So, again, to say trauma is the problem, I think, is another misconception. I think just some people react to trauma in a different way that may trigger this off. So I think it's important to realise that, you know, somebody like myself that come from a very sort of dysfunctional sort of background, grew up outside the law, doing a lot of things that weren't right, and then drinking being quite a thing that everybody did to quite excess, and drugs and stuff like that, and crime. But then, you know, like I say, in treatment, you get people that have come from quite well-adjusted backgrounds. You know, they've had good parenting, they've had good education, and they have you know, I'd say it this way, that they've got quite a lot of neural network. So they have a lot of capacity because they're more developed as people. They have a lot more emotional maturity, or emotional intelligence, I like to call it, but you don't want to be insulting. They have an understanding of how they feel, that they're not so rebellious because they sort of reached a point where they reason a lot better. And so them sort of people are a lot easier to help because you're just telling them about addiction. You're just telling them, look, this is your addiction, this is what to do about it, and they go and get on with it. The guys kind of generally that have been less educated and come from sort of more poor backgrounds, more deprived backgrounds, that can be a lot harder work because they don't have so much neural network because they've not had the environment to develop that. So there's a lot of connections need to be made for them guys, but the addiction's the same. See, that's one thing that you learn. If you get the most abused, uncared for child, the most uneducated child on planet Earth, and you get the most successful, developed, loved, cared for, you know, educated guy with doctorates and degrees, and he's got everything anyone could ever want, but they're both alcoholic or drug addict, if they both drink, they both behave exactly the same. Now again, this guy in the lower end of society, his behaviours might not stand out quite as much as the guy up the top end.
True. Yeah.
But their behaviours are exactly the same. So, you know, believe it or not, there's quite a lot of people on planet Earth that are alcoholic that do have housing, that aren't homeless. Probably the majority. They're the homeless people. They're the thin end of the wedge.
Yeah.
They're the minority.
They just stand out.
They just stand out because we see them, but there's a lot of people that have houses, that have jobs, that have children. You know, they're a bit more higher functioning at a point, but when you work in a rehab, you see every kind of person. So it can't, and you see people that haven't been molested, can't even understand what the serious issues. They can really seek their mind. Look, most people can find something to go, you know, that was a really bad experience, but, you know, is that what did it to me? But, so it can't be homelessness, you know. For some people that may be part of it, but to say that's what's causing their addiction, I don't agree. Because I've seen so many different kinds of people. So again, bringing it back to where addiction's concerned, it's like there's this disconnect that it says centres in the mind. Now, again, that sort of throws up all kinds of images of like, well, what is this? What we're talking about now? We call it like it's powerless, and so something's switching off. Now, it may never have been switched on. So again, when we look at like the brain scans and neural networks, now I'm not an expert in any of that. I'm pretty much just a layman. I've just sort of, my goal has always been to keep this as simple as possible so I can talk to everybody. You know, I don't get too technical on what I'm saying. You can go and look online if you like, and there's all the technical stuff if that's your thing and you're interested in it. I'm just about the simple ideas that these neural pathways that need to be developed to help you to function in this world and create relationships, you know, that generally grow to suit the environment you're in. So no matter how great or little your brain is developed, now your brain's obviously developed to a reasonable standard, because I presume that when you're around your family and friends and peers, that you kind of behave in a manner that doesn't distress them too much. They kind of like, you know the moves to make, the things to say. Pretty sure you've got a big long list of things you can't say if you don't want to, you know. Some of them you may agree with, some of them you may not, but you may want to get on with everyone.
Yeah,
so as long as your neural pathways have been developed through your childhood, that you've been given because even like going into a restaurant, going to work, driving a car, you've learned that.
Yeah,
you wasn't born able to walk. You learned to walk.
Yeah.
But on the outside, your legs were doing what they're doing. But on the inside, your brain was growing neural pathways and making connections with your balance.
Every day.
By being forced into an environment that helped you keep developing. Every time somebody put their arms out, it encouraged you to run towards them.
Yeah.
And that environment started to develop what you only had the capacity to do when you were born. So as you keep developing the brain, you develop the capacity of the person. And that works on our emotions as well. That, you know, if you've got a family that are very shut off emotionally, then they're not going to draw that out of you. You're not going to develop the capacity to be able to receive or express emotions. But you do have the capacity, but unless the environment demands you start using it, you're not going to develop that capacity. So
you need that willingness to push through it and learn it as well, right?
Especially that and especially some stuff that's very uncomfortable. Because again, if in that environment you've had hurt emotions, or, you know, because people generally feel vulnerable when they're not good at something.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, if you took somebody who'd never played football before and then all of a sudden took them and stuck him in the middle of a football game,
I'd hate it. Yeah.
It would throw up a lot of problems for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
because you'd be underdeveloped. But if you've got a good, strong character, your head would go, do you know what? Just start running around and doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
But while you're doing that, you'll start developing pathways, and the stronger they become, the better you become at football.
Yeah. Next time you go, you'll be, so
You'll get a little bit better. And that's kind of like the game on everything.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you want to promote on sort of every level. So if your brain has developed a certain amount, at least to suit the area of society that you're in, because again, some people on a, if you're sort of brought up on a council estate and everybody's rough and rugged and nobody cares that much about education or manners or any of that kind of thing, as long as you learn to the level that they're at, you fit in with everyone. That's part of what your brain's there for, is to create healthy relationships, create good environments. If you're getting enough sort of food and all that, you may be happy there. That's fine. But then if you come from like the other end of society where there are a lot more education's expected of you, a lot different behaviours are expected of you, different conversations, different things you should say, shouldn't say. And again, the same, if you've just learned to do what everyone around you's doing, and then they all find you pleasing and you're happy doing that, everybody's okay. And then you get everyone in between. You're going to grow to suit the environment that you're in. Now, there is differences, and everybody has got a difference. We've all got our own unique twist on things, but generally a lot of us is the same. So if both of them people achieve that, then that's fine. But what we find with people with alcoholics and addicts, now this happens with everybody, is that if they take a drink, something changes in them. That might not be the first drink, it might be the third or the fourth and the fifth. And if you are an alcoholic or you're in a relationship with one of them, you'll know that if that person has one drink, it actually improves them a little bit. Mm-hmm. They lighten up. Their anxiety leaves them, that irritability, that discontent. They have 2 drinks, they're getting a little bit happy. 3 drinks, maybe a little bit more. Or miserable, whatever their bag is. But then something changes in them, and they almost switch to become a different kind of person. Well, there's something that's happening in them, or if they become too stressed, if there's too much stress or strain or difficulties, which again is a sign that the brain isn't working properly. When you feel like you can't cope, you can kick into fight and flight, which is no real good reason for that. But it's just that you feel threatened, you feel like you can't cope. You're going to fight or flight, so you can get angry or you can want to run away, or, part of the flight mechanism is I also want to stay out of situations. So I'm almost being in flight before I even get there. So if certain relationships are difficult, like you already said there, you're probably not going to make it, so you end up getting dropped into the middle of a football game.
Yeah. So
that you've already sort of got the flight
for sure
on that before you even get there. And so if people take a substance that causes this problem, or their life starts to put pressure on them, their brain literally shuts off. It disconnects.
Yeah, constantly on the back foot.
Well, they go into this lower mind. They're called a midbrain, where they become more, you kind of lose a lot of function. If you had it in the first place, that's one of the things. See, some people never had a lot of function in the first place because they grew up in a very deprived environment, so there's not a lot to shut down. They're already nearly behaving pretty badly socially anyway before they've had a drink. So even though their brain's shutting down, they haven't got that far to go. And in an environment where everyone's behaving the same, it can be a little bit harder to pick up on. But if you've got like an airline pilot who's picking up the drink or becoming too stressed and his brain's shutting down, he's going to be losing function as well. But they're all going to start behaving the same. Yeah. They're going to start behaving antisocial or immoral or whatever you like to call it, but suits their section of society.
All right, and we're back. So we're going to sort of pick up where we left off, but I'm going to try and get us on track a little bit.
So back on the trail there, though, just to finish that point about the brain, is like, because again, it's like when we do our talks, we sort of show the 2 poles in society to show that everyone is different, because wherever you're sort of brought up, your brain grows to develop to suit that environment. So if you get a kid from China and bring him over to London, he's going to grow up more like an English person, unless you put him in an Asian household or a Jamaican household. If you put him in a Jamaican household, he's going to go up kind of Jamaican because the brain is going to develop to suit the environment that it's in. So it's not really in the flesh, it's in the environment.
Yeah.
You know, they sort of say nature or nurture. It's a bit of both really, but you are going to grow up to suit the environment you're in. But if you've got an addiction problem, when you become too stressed or you take a drink or a drug, your brain's going to switch off. It's going to go dark. And they can see this on brain scans. And you change as a person. Then all of your moral beliefs, all of your behaviours, all of the things that are in the front part of your brain, your frontal lobe, you get denied access to that. And you become a very different person. That's why people, when they wake up the next day and they're sobered up or they've come down off the drugs, then they're like, I can't believe I behave like that. That's not who I am. Now, generally, because they've got a top-down control that their front part of their brain is keeping them behaving. You know, it's rational and reasoning with them. Mm-hmm. But you lose access to that. So I think that's the bridge, that's the gap. So to build in the bridge part of it is one, realising that you're disconnecting. It's like switching off. It's like you're being switched off. So it's like, how do I, one, open that brain, but then how do we keep it open? So for me, at 30 years doing this as a career, addiction is a closed mind or an obsession. Recovery is an open mind. So our goal is, when we're building the bridge with someone, is to say, look, your brain's switching off. One, because you're taking chemicals into your body that's causing it, but you're trying to use them chemicals to resolve this brain closing problem. It does work. That's why a lot of people, when you have your first drink or drug, it kind of pops you open. Like I think we were talking, that you feel that if you're getting a bit stressed and you have a drink, you lighten up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think this happens to everybody. The brain closes for everybody. We sort of suck in. The brain shuts down and we get into that fight or flight. Because if somebody upsets anybody, and you notice you could be the nicest person, and all of a sudden, oh, I feel like thumping that Jenny, what she's done to me.
Yeah.
You know, she makes me so angry. And it's kind of like your mind going into that fight or flight place. And if you brain scanned, you'd see it going dark.
I always say it with my friends, it's putting up your shutters. Like if you say something that offends them, they put the shutters up.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of shutting down.
Yeah, but then they go and reason with someone and they go, you know, maybe Matt didn't mean that. Maybe Jenny was having a bad day. And they reason with you, then slowly you lighten up. Yeah. But that's literally what's happening. You can see the neural nets start coming back online. And so, you know, the higher you got ideals, which, you know, the better ideals you have of, like, if you believe, you know what, I should be forgiving as a person, then you're probably going to be a lot happier person. If you think that I'm not forgiving, that depends on how I'm treated. And if I'm treated badly, then I don't have to forgive and I can bear a grudge justifiably, you're probably not going to be a very happy person. Yeah. So having the belief that forgiveness is an important, because it makes your brain a lot lighter. It makes you, you know, lighten up. And again, I love this stuff because it fits into all the spirituality that about being light, the light, you know, being lightened up, not being dark. When you go dark, you become quite nasty and a bit horrible. So the goal is, and again, when it's talking about that bridge, it's talking about, how do I get that open again? I'm powerless. How do I get that power to come back on again? And so that's the first step that you're trying to achieve with someone with an addiction problem. One is to get them to see this happening to them and acknowledge it, because you can't change something you don't accept. Yeah. So they have to accept something's abnormal is happening to me and I'm becoming maladjusted. Now, I'm not always like that, but I certainly am at these points in my life. And again, some people are like that all the time because they never had much neural net to start with. Mm-hmm. So their behaviour is pretty bad before you put a drink or a drug in them, because they've not developed very much. And so the first step is that you want to get them to get their mind open. And the way that we've learned to do that is that when one alcoholic or drug addict talk to another with the purpose of recovery, it tends to work. You know, I know how to talk to people with a closed mind, and they go, I feel better now, and they get restored to their right mind. Then they can reason again.
Mm-hmm.
If they were very unreasonable, they become reason. Again, you can see it when you work in a rehab, especially where addiction's concerned. When they're obsessed, they're like, I'm going to leave rehab. And you're like, well, you know, that's not a good idea. You've done that 9 times before. And they're like, yeah, I know, but it's going to be different this time. And I kind of learned it takes about 30 minutes to kind of break down all their arguments,
Mm-hmm.
where they're like, rationally, they say, I 99.9% agree with what you're saying. But see, the trouble when you're obsessed, or you've got a closed mind, obsession is the thought to the exclusion of all others, or a thought that takes precedent over everything else in your life, including your children. So even if there's a 0.1% chance in their head that it may be different this time, they're going to take that over the 99.999%. If 7 billion people on planet Earth said what you're doing's wrong, but one said, well, hang on a minute, we don't know for sure, the obsessed person's going to go with that one. So that obsession is fatal. So when they're in that obsession, there's not a lot you can do with people. But it's how can you smash that illusion? How can you smash that obsession? The reasoning doesn't often do it, if I'm honest. It's usually that they've reached a place in themselves where there's something a little bit different. They're a little bit more willing to enter into dialogue. And as their brain pops open and they return to their senses, that usually gets their attention.
Yeah.
And that's what you're kind of hoping for when you're working with people, that they get that connection, which is like the beginning of the building the bridge. Because it's like, now that's the bit we need to build on.
Yeah.
We need to capture that bit and keep that bit at the forefront of all our minds, because that's the bit that sets you free from the obsession. And so we've got to keep it as simple as that. And so it really can be as simple as like going to meetings, getting friends that you can talk to that understand, that can help you snap out of it. And generally it does work with other people in recovery that have been around a bit longer. They're quick to see what's going on for you. And you know, that's one of the great things about human beings. We can lend each other our brains by, if you listen to me. And again, it's astounding, because like I say, I'm 56. I've been in recovery myself for over 30 years. But it's astounding how I have to phone somebody else up sometimes. They're going to tell me what I already know before I can change my own mind. But without their help, I can't change my own mind.
Yeah. So you can't build this bridge alone.
It's impossible. And so that's what we're trying to teach people. Look, the real power of this is one. That's why I think 12-step fellowships work the best, and why everyone else is trying to emulate it through other groups and things like that. But again, it's like it's one alcoholic talking or addict talking to another with the purpose of recovery. That bit's quite important.
Yeah.
And recovery is not just about, you know, your drug problem or your alcohol problem. It's about recovery. How do I recover this closed-minded state? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to recover my mind. It's been shut off. It's like your computer getting a virus and you're losing connection to some software. Until you recover it, your computer is not going to have the capacity.
Yeah.
And it's no different with this stuff. It's how do I recover the capacity? Like I say, some people never had the capacity to begin with, but again, we're only talking about with drugs and alcohol, because they're not all of your life affairs. This stuff does work on all that stuff as well, because you can start really developing. The people that get this, their lives really develop. When people used to come back from our rehab, you know, quite often the support workers in the local authorities would give us a call and say, man, look, there's something different about the people coming back from your rehab, from other rehabs. He said they just seem to have this something different about them. And what it is that they seem more willing to want to develop and grow and get involved. And I'd say because we've taught them how to keep their mind open.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is.
They've got a taste for building those neural pathways. And,
Well, because then they get more consciousness.
Yeah.
And then they start taking more getting more personal power. They become empowered.
Yeah.
And they don't need all that dependency that seems to be offered to, you know, a lot of people that go for addiction treatment are going to be offered drug dependency or financial dependency or housing dependency. They're not going to get all that for themselves. They're going to give it to them, but really they're just dependent. So, you know, people say, you know, well, I'm not powerless, or, you know, it's like, well, look, let's take away all the people that are supporting you and see what happens to you. But I know the people that get good recovery, they start becoming empowered. They go and get their own housing. They go and build their own careers because their brain's been set free. Now they've crossed the bridge and they're living normally.
Yeah.
They've got all the same struggles as everybody else, but they've not got this impediment of a drug addiction that's keeping them closed down and stuck.
I was going to ask, you know, if you've been clean for a couple of years and you've got yourself some good sponsors and, you know, you're on that journey to recovery, you're you're well into it. Is there a line? When do you cross it? Like when have you crossed that bridge or built that bridge?
Well, I think the thing is, it's like, again, because again, you could look at this, it's like, see, a lot of people are just what we'd call physically sober. All they've done is really they've stopped drinking, stopped taking drugs, which again is a big step up for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they're living in a very low, I want to say low life. I don't mean that in a derogatory sort of way, but they've because their brain isn't developed, they're living in a very underdeveloped state. So they're still very dependent on external forces to make sure that they've got housing and somebody else is looking after their kids and feeding them, and you know they're sort of stuck in that place. But they think, well, I'm not drinking and taking drugs, so that's obviously a step up. And then you get, do you know what was your question again?
So what is there a line? I mean, I imagine it's quite a blurred line, but you know, when is that bridge crossed?
The development. So again, this is where people are different. If you've got people from a real, just the fact that they're actually successfully not drinking and taking drugs, that's got to give us some evidence that where drink and drugs are concerned, they've found the power to stop that. Now, that may not last forever, but where their life is, that's going to depend on where they've come from socially to begin with.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody that, like I say, they've got degrees, they're a doctor, they're high earners, they've done a lot of damage because of their drinking. Well, then people, once you get them switched on again, their brains are open, they understand it, they kind of fly. They just go straight back and carry on with their lives as normal and develop, start dealing with all their other issues, because then development becomes kind of an important part of their life's process. But again, a lot of them other guys, they need a lot more development before, you know, we say this, a measure of a person's success isn't to the heights that they climb, but from the depths that they come from. So some people come from very deep places, and if they've been abusing drugs for a long period of time, already on a brain that wasn't functioning very well to begin with, I think it takes a good 4 years to recover if they're making, not just not drinking, but actually practicing a recovery program. And that kind of, for me, puts you almost at the beginning after 4 years of abstinence and working a recovery program.
Yeah.
Because that way you start gaining a bit more control over your emotional state, and you start feeling a lot more comfortable in yourself, which can start you then dealing with the bigger problems that may have already been present in your life before you started drinking and drugs, or you may have a lot of problems in your life because of your drinking and drugs. And some people obviously have a mixed bag. So in that sense, everybody's different. But I do think, like, I watch people that the worst cases. You know, I've got friends that you know, they were abused as children. They ended up in abusive relationships. They ended up in prostitution. You know, a lot of crime, street crime. You know, they will be sort of considered the worst case drug addicts. You know, the front page of the local newspapers for the menace that they'd become to society. For them people, it can. I think it takes a good 10 years before their brain recovers to a reasonable level that they feel, you know, more comfortable living in that normal kind of life environment. You know, which is why we always sort of try to create space in our rehab for people to stay for long term, because some people just needed to be around, you know, in more controlled environments for a longer period of time. But we kept them environments you've got to keep developing in them. But it can take, you know, a good 10 odd years for some people to really be able to develop enough neural pathways to feel able to sort of get on in the general population.
And I guess to sort of build that resilience to not go back to the environment that nurtured, you know, this destructive behaviour to begin with, because a lot of people, they are going to go back to their friends and who, you know, that particular environment, aren't they?
Yeah, and we say if you can't do that, then there's still something wrong with your spiritual condition. Yeah. That really, if you understand what this is about, then there should be no environment that should be troublesome to you, because ultimately they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, these people don't want to do it. A lot of people don't want to do drugs and alcohol, that are drinking and taking drugs. They just don't know how to stop. And it's a difficult bridge to cross, because, you know, even like having that idea that you've got this brain that was already not in good shape before it took a drink or a drug, but when it took a drink or a drug, it made it feel better. And now it's developed this life of drinking and drug taking. And now you're asking it to stop. It's not going to know what to do. And it's probably ill-equipped to do that. Which is where recovery comes in. This is where like fellowship comes in, and other sponsors and friends, because again, we can use each other's brains. It's like, look, you might not know how to do it, man, but I know how to do it. If you can trust me and you're willing to listen, I'm willing to give you guidance and hold you in the experience long enough for you to start feeling comfortable in it, or at very least feel that you've managed to get through it without collapsing. I mean, I used to go to my AA meetings, and for years I'd say, I can't believe how bad I feel, but I don't want to drink. It's like a miracle. It's like my life is in a terrible state. But the last thing my sister died when she was 42, and I was standing next to her bed, and she died, and it was horrific. I never knew how bad you could feel. It was traumatic. My whole family, I could feel my whole family go into this trauma. And the first thought I had was, I'm so glad I don't drink. It wasn't I want to drink. It was the most painful moment I've ever experienced in my life. And the gratitude for not drinking, because I thought, if I was drinking, I'd be coming through that door drunk, making it all about me, and making this experience even worse for my family. And so I learned early on in my recovery that, look, there's not an experience in life that a drink won't make worse. It's like, I think I've gone through all, like, say there's a meteorite hurtling towards the earth and you're going to be wiped out in 4 hours. Would you drink then? And it's like, no, that'd make that worse for me. Because I'd want to be phoning my friends, telling them I love them. I want to be supporting my family. I'd want to be doing something decent with my life in that last 4 hours. Not bleeding getting drunk. It's like there isn't an experience in life that a drink won't make worse. I got that off a poster in Canada, funny enough. There's a bloke, he had his legs crossed and he was slumped down in the gutter. And it said, there's nothing in life that's as bad, a drink won't make worse. And that always stuck in my head. Because I don't have to drink today. And that's the miracle of learning about this brain and how to build the bridge. I've got a good bridge, and I've got good bridge builders. I've got good people around me. Because again, your life goes on. I'm dealing with stuff now that I've never dealt with before in my life. And I'm not equipped to deal with everything in life. I'm a very sensitive person and still got traumas. I still get triggered. And so, it's difficult for me to deal with certain situations that I still find very traumatic, very difficult. It wasn't part of my growing up, dealing with certain relationships with other people and in governments and what's going on in the world now. I mean, none of us have really dealt with it before.
Mm.
And some people just have the ability to shut off, which I don't. I've got to think about everything and I've got to decide what to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a host of people around me that can help me support my thinking and give me, ideas and teach me things and show me. I learned this morning, I thought, I feel like I've got a lot of anxiety growing, so I spent an extra 20 minutes meditating and breathing deeply and, so I'm always, again, it's not just about getting your brain open, it's about then how do I develop that, because I don't want it to close in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's once you get it open, then you've got to develop it. So I see recovery and treatment in two different parts. I see it in the initial treatment, and then you've got the development. And again, where I'm at in my life, I'm kind of more interested in the development than the treatment. Now, when I started, it was almost impossible to get someone off of heroin or alcohol. But sort of 30 years later, it's not that hard if the person's willing. But the development is very scarce in our country. I think there's a 98% hole in the market for development of most people, but especially when you're around drug addicts and alcoholics.
Yeah.
Some of them just don't know how to be a good dad. They want to be, they just never had it mirrored to them. They never had someone show them. They don't know how to be successful in business. They don't know how to do a lot of things, and that's what we're trying to do now, is put together workshops and stuff that we can help people that are not so great at that stuff to deal with it. We work a lot with people that have had children and done a lot of damage to their children. How do I put that right? I mean, the program does cover all aspects of your life, but it's all, I always said this, if you imagine a graph and you've got like a square block on your graph, and at the bottom there's a very small part, there's 2% of that tower, and see that, I'd say that 2% is your recovery, and then 98% is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
What you find in recovery, funny enough, is that they become obsessed with recovery. So they actually spend 98% of their life thinking about the 2%.
Yeah.
And then they probably only spend 2% thinking about the 98%. But the 2% is so important because it's the foundation of the 98%.
Yeah.
If you've not got recovery, the rest of your life's not going to work.
Not possible. Yeah.
And so, put a lot of importance on having a good foundation. But your brain is your foundation for your life. Your mental health is your foundation for your life. So it's important to get around people that understand that you need to keep your head straight, because what's going on in your head is affecting your life. And if you've got this extra problem of your brain closing, addiction is your brain closing. Recovery is getting it open and developing it. But they're like two different parts.
Yeah.
So I really love the 2%. And I make sure that's the first thing I look at. You understand how to keep that 2% in order. Because a lot of people really not got a good foundation. They're building on sand. And we know what happens if you build on sand. It comes collapsing down. But I really love the 98% as well. Because that's where that's the normal bit happens for you. That's where your life happens, and you can enjoy your life. You can get back to your life. You can have a full life. You can have a great life. You can live your dreams. You can put right whatever damage you've done. You can restore back to your children what you've taken from them. Because we just see it countless of times for the people that enter into recovery. They recover. They get their minds cleared, and they start redeveloping, and they start pointing their life in the direction that they want to go, and they stop being robbed by chemicals and ignorance. So it's a fantastic journey that, we say recovery is possible, but it is about bridge building and bridge crossing and finding out where your blank spots are. And again, we call it infantry, doing infantry, but it's really just doing good assessments by looking at your responses. That how you responding is going to tell us what's missing in your life, what you need to develop.
Yeah.
But you can go through all of the horrors of this world without a drink and drug if you got good recovery. If you got that 2% right, you can face anything in this world without taking a drink and drug. And not even wanting to. That's the miracle of it.
Yeah.
You don't even want to take a drink or a drug.
It's the magic of that.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
For an alcoholic and addict, it's like a freaking miracle. But it's understanding how you create that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's what good recovery does.
Amazing.
I think this brings us to the end.
I think it does. Wrapped it up nicely. Well, thank you very much. We'll be back again. There's obviously many more topics to dive into, and I like that we're kind of getting beyond just the very sort of basics of recovery now and starting to talk about development, and because it goes on forever, doesn't it?
It's everything to do with humans. It's what this is about. Whatever's important to you.
Yeah, super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So I hope you all enjoyed it, and see you next time.
Thank you.